show, like every topic, jump out of the box and then just request it, and then that way after each topic I can just let you write in the box. Hi Nessa. We ready? I think it's your speakers. Thank you, Emoji J. Welcome to Person, Place, or Thing, where we talk about a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. This week's person is Buffalo Bill, and this week's place is Montgomery, Alabama, and this week's thing is aspirin. We are in transition to be a featured show, so please follow the featured show rules, which is no cursing, no nudity, no drinking, and no smoking while you're on stream. I do have a guest, and I'll let him introduce himself now. His name is Vibrance. Hi, Vibe.
How are you, Gopher?
I'm doing good. What you
Hi.
up to today?
So I actually have to go open up the aquarium store here in a little bit, but
Okay, well,
you
we'll
know,
jump in
just
it
been
then.
just been keeping the streams going and been, bouncing around the featured show community like usual.
I feel that. I feel that. Alrighty, go ahead and jump out of the box, and we'll get right into it.
All right.
So after each segment, I will share some fun facts and tidbits that I really enjoy. And then at the end of the show, we'll go over this week's quote um, in history. So, like I was saying earlier, our person is Buffalo Bill, and this guy is larger than life. I've had a lot of people wonder if he was the serial killer. No, that's not. That's not the right Buffalo Bill. This guy was an adventurer. He's the one that started the um, Wild Wild West little series in the books that they had. They were called penny books. So the person is Buffalo Bill, and at the turn of the 20th century, and the most famous American on earth was Buffalo Bill. So more than anyone else, he cemented our common conception of the Wild West. He made 70 million American and European friends, so people that saw his show, his rodeo show, and over 30 years, it ran to the late 18 and into the early 1900s. And although most of the world knew him as a showman, he had a lot of adventure in his life. He did a lot of really cool things. His name was actually William F. Cody, and he was born February 22nd, 1846. His brother and his dad died at age 11, and so with no real safety net or chance to like get an education or really better his life at 11, he had to work. And what he did is he rode. Like he was really really good on the back of a horse, and he started working for the Pony Express at the age of 15. In his late teens, he briefly fought in the Civil War, and then he went to work for the Kansas Pacific Railroad Company, hunting and the abundant population of buffalo to feed the railroad workers. And actually, how he got his nickname Buffalo Bill is he killed 11 buffalo with 12 rifle shots. That's like crazy. Buffalo are huge. So it would make sense that it would take more than one shot, but 11 with 12 shots. Um, and then after he got like notoriety for it, he went on to kill an additional 40,000 allegedly in 18 months. Buffalo to feed the railroad workers. And what I liked about it is that it did note that like they didn't let any of it go to waste. They used every bit of those buffalo to feed the railroad workers. And he pulled this shot where he would shoot upside down and blindfolded at the buffalo, and he actually was able to get quite a few that way. Um, so he he played in okay after he was recognized for that, and then after he went into the war, it was the Native American and then the Settler War. Um, he actually would like he blew up, like everybody knew who he was, and they had a play about him, and he actually played his character because playing himself paid more money than actually being himself. I thought that was hilarious. um so a lot of the people, when they would hunt for buffalo for the railroad workers, they would shoot them from a distance, right? They wouldn't really go get close to them, which makes sense because it's buffalo. It's not like it's a freaking rabbit. But Buffalo Bill would just ride like right through him. Just he didn't care. He just did it. Um, and then in 1868, he became a chief civilian scout for the U.S. Cavalry because he could ride such long lengths in such a short amount of time. Like riding a horse was um, really one of his skills. And so there was a whole army of people got lost in a brutal winter storm where there was no visibility. And so everybody was hunkered down. Nobody was going to go find this army of men. But Buffalo Bill went ahead and went out there and managed to find and rescue every single one of them by himself. Nobody else was willing to go. And this crazy guy was like, I'm on it, whatever. So he actually participated in a lot of the war with the Native Americans, but he also very blatantly stated that he never went to battle once with the Native Americans, just because they always retaliated because promises were broken, treaties were broken, like they were retaliating for their mistreatment. And like I thought it was kind of cool that Buffalo Bill, even though he was fighting for his the settlers, he still managed to make sure that he was being honest and fair about it. Like he wasn't just making them seem like the bad guys, which I thought was really cool too. He uh, he actually won a Medal of Honor because he participated in the actual fighting in the wars. And then his popularity grew so big that they actually started selling stories like little like comic books. Um, like nationwide, which I thought was crazy because of his horse riding skills. Like riding a horse got him so much notoriety, and then he decided that he wanted to pursue more of like the limelight. And so he started hosting rodeos called the Wild Wild West. And a lot what we think of rodeos is not quite the same as what it was back then. Have you guys remember the performances that like England would put on in like way back, where people would dress in all armor and then they would like actually fight? That's what he did, but he replaced the armor with leather and guns and horse-drawn buggies. Um, he uh, he was so popular that on one of his like scouting where he was keeping guard. One of the Native Americans who was a scout actually recognized him, and his name was Yellow Hair, and he ended up attacking Buffalo Bill just because he recognized who he was. And Buffalo Bill was actually quicker on his feet and to the trigger, and he ended up killing Yellow Hair. But back then, there was a lot of scalping going on, right? And instead of scalping, he just took his headdress. He didn't like damage his corpse or anything like that. And that was one of the first times that people who had been scalping actually didn't take anything other than the headdress. And that actually started the downward popularity of scalping. And I thought that that was really cool too. And when he did these world famous Wild Wild West shows, which is essentially a rodeo, Annie Oakley actually toured with him for 17 years. She did the shot where she would shoot behind her with a mirror, is what so she'd have a mirror and then she'd have her gun just laying on her shoulder, and she'd do shots like that. It is argued that she is the best sharpshooter possibly ever. So that brought him a lot of yeah, for trick shots, that brought him a lot of notoriety for his wild wild west um, rodeos. He was essentially equivalent to like a larger than life person, almost like, I don't even know what person would describe him that would be relatable today. Just because he had so much courage and spunk and desire to just do it. Like Nike said, just do it. Um, so a lot of Hollywood, when they picked up and it got more modernized, they really blew everything out of proportion. And that's actually where the serial killer Buffalo Bill came from, is Hollywood's whitewashing who he actually was, to make him seem like a really bad guy that unfortunately he wasn't. I guess that's not unfortunate, it's pretty fortunate that he wasn't. Um, and he actually ended up dying in let's see, he lived to be 83, and he worked right up until the day that he died to pay off his debts, because even though he was so popular and everybody knew who he still didn't make a livable wage. Like he lived a very meager life, and he ended up dying in 1917, um, still working. So that is the story of Buffalo Bill. He's like a modern day Batman, is how I would describe it. So, Vibe, I'm going to call you into the box and then I can go over some fun facts and tidbits with you.
Alrighty. I was gonna say kind of like Batman, except for more modernly broke.
Yeah, more modernly broke. And his was skill and not a whole bunch of little gadgets.
Right? Yeah, because I mean, let's face it, Bruce Wayne was just rich and nuts. Buffalo Bill, just nuts.
Yeah, he's just crazy, just crazy. Um,
Type of
so
guy.
Buffalo Bill was a prominent proponent of the American Indian treaty rights.
Hmm.
So, like I was saying, like he fought against them, but he did it with integrity. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And then he fought for their rights as well. And that's a fun fact and tidbit. He also supported the women's suffrage movement, which helped to support women being able to do more than just be in the kitchen.
Right. I think what it stems from is Buffalo. I think he was trying to get to a point where it doesn't matter if we're male, female, black, white, Asian, Indian. The
Mm-hmm.
fact is, like, we're not going to be able to survive as a species without working together. So I think that was he was
Yeah,
trying to kind of bridge the gap.
right. So another kind of tidbit about Buffalo Bill is there's a lot of controversy on whether he actually did work for the Pony Express or not. Not very many people actually remember him working for the Pony Express. It's documented that he did, but like you can't find any serious documentation on it. Like
Right. Well, I mean,
actual
back then,
documentation.
here was your documentation. Here you go. I need you to ride this 3 states over on the horse. We'll see you back in 4 weeks.
Well, they had pictures. There's not even any pictures of him working on the Pony Express.
Right, but at 15 years old, he's going to be stopping for a picture. Nah, I gotta get,
Well,
gotta get, gotta get to point A to point B. Otherwise, these wolves are gonna freaking eat me alive since I'm sleeping out in the middle of the desert and stuff.
no, so he actually worked on the Pony Express, not just feeding the railroad workers. He himself was a railroad worker, and that's where the controversy is because nobody knows if he was really a railroad worker or if he just got the buffalo.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's more of there's a broad. He worked for Pony Express, but what did he do exactly? Like,
Yeah.
what was his actual job title? Like,
So
it's like he's
this
been
one,
redacted.
this one caught me off guard because I didn't realize that this culture was prominent back then. But Cody was a Freemason. Buffalo Bill
Oh,
was a
okay.
freaking Freemason.
All
That
right.
was
Well,
crazy.
yeah. So see that now you're starting to make it sound like what is that movie? The Da Vinci Code. Like it's all trickle down.
It could be just a big conspiracy. I
Right.
can't say for sure.
Right. It's a
Um,
hypothesis. I'm not saying it is. Just hypothetically speaking.
Buffalo Bill's family was Quaker, and so they were strongly opposed to slavery. And
That
that
makes
with the wars that he fought, it's very interesting to me that he can compartmentalize like he did. You know what I'm
hmm
saying? Like he can think I'm going to go to war to kill these people, but I'm also going to speak on their behalf because what's happening isn't right. I thought that was fascinating. I don't know that I would be able to do that.
Yeah, that would be it'd be a little difficult to be having to flip flop.
Right? So, and Buffalo Bill was once the most recognized person on Earth.
Right. And then like we invented the plane and stuff like that, and everybody kind of forgot.
Mm-hmm. Right? So that's all I've got
Instead,
about
instead
Buffalo
they just
Bill.
remember it puts the lotion on the skin. Nope,
What
that ain't the
it
right
gets the
guy.
hose again. Not the right guy, no. No.
Right? Yeah, it puts the Joe dirt in the hole.
Yeah. Wrong guy, wrong guy. So that's what I've got about Buffalo Bill. Thank you for coming to Person, Place, or Thing. If you need to go, I totally understand. If you'd like to hang some more, I still got two more
Oh no,
topics.
I got we're good. I don't have to be there until 11. It's only 8:20. So,
Oh, yay! So
yeah,
you
no,
can
I'm
hang
here
out
for the
with
show.
us.
I'm here for the show.
Yay! That's awesome. So just for anybody just joining, you can go ahead and exit the box 5. Thank you so much.
You're
For anybody that's joining, this is called Person, Place, or Thing, where we talk about a person, a place, or thing for this week in history. We just got done talking about our person, who was Buffalo Bill, a larger than life character, and we're going to be going right into the place. And the place is Montgomery, Alabama. The day is February 22nd, 1956. On this day was actually a very, very, very important date for civil rights history. 89 African Americans, including Martin Luther King Jr. and Rosa Parks, voluntarily turned themselves in to authorities in Montgomery, Alabama, on February 22nd of 1956, after being indicted under a 1921 law prohibiting conspiracies that interfere with lawful business. So their protest that was actually very peaceful, they got arrested for that. And their protest was about segregation on the buses. The statute designed to break trade union action outlawed boycotts against businesses without just cause. UAW President Walter Reuther was an avid supporter of the civil rights at a time when people didn't always choose to speak out about it. So it was very taboo to talk about. You got a lot of lashback and criticism if you spoke about it. And he didn't care. He talked about it anyways. And he was also a friend of Martin Luther King Jr. And the UAW supported the movement in a lot of ways. They even paid the bail and represented the African Americans, the 80 African Americans that were arrested for the cause. Um, Authorities charged Martin Luther King Jr. with organizing the Black community to boycott the buses in Montgomery, which was already in its third month. The boycott was needed because the town segregation laws allowed separate areas on the buses for Black and white passengers and required Black passengers to give up their seats for white people if seats were needed. They actually had a sign. They had a sign that they would move if more white people had got on the bus. They would move it back so that there were more seats available for the white people, and they would force the African American community to get up and give their seat and move past their little sign. Um, and they weren't permitted to offend and pass the white section of the bus, which you had to go to the front of the bus to pay your ticket. So a lot of these people would have to come all the way up through the bus, pay their ticket, go out the door, and come all the way back around as to not go past the white section twice, because that was offensive. I do too. Um, so the Black leaders in the South knew a call to action needed to take place, so they asked the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP Secretary Rosa Parks to help start the action. Although other women before her refused to give up their seats, remember the little 17-year-old that we had talked about last week? That's the first person that refused to give up their seat. But Rosa Parks took it to a new level, and that's why she's mostly recognized for it, because she made it go much bigger. So she only moved one seat over when they came to move the sign. She only moved one seat over rather than moving behind the sign, and she was arrested for that. And her fine was $10, was her fine, and then she had to pay $4 in court fees, which today, like, that's not a lot of money, but back then that was a lot of money. And her trial only lasted 30 minutes, and she was found guilty. Later that day, 35, so after her trial and she was found guilty, 35,000 leaflets were sent out urging everybody in the Black community to stay off the buses until segregation was eliminated on the buses. Since 75% of the city's bus passengers were African Americans, the boycott would definitely make an impression on the buses and in the city. For the next few months, Martin Luther King Jr. helped the community stay mobilized and motivated as the black community began walking, carpooling, hitchhiking, riding buses, riding bikes, trying to get to work and to their court that they had to go to because they were just arrested because they were boycotting the buses. Um, they had to walk or like find other means to get there. And back then, guys, the bus was a big deal. Like, not a lot of people had their own vehicles. You had to find alternate routes to get to work. Could you imagine not being able to ride a bus, that being your only form of actual transportation aside from a horse, and then like not able be able to? That would really be hard, but it was necessary because they were being treated so poorly on the buses, um, that who would want to ride them anyway? You know what I mean? Um, so Rosa Parks served as a dispatcher, answering the phones and connecting riders with vehicles. So Rosa Parks tried what she could to get the people that did have their own vehicles. She tried to make sure that they could or would give people rides, and she would connect these people, so that they would know who could and couldn't give them a ride. So I thought that, that was pretty cool that she was willing to step up for that. However, it's also the second time that she got arrested. And it was also another significant part to our memories of the civil rights movement, because most of the Americans have attributed the photos of her arrest on December 1st, 1955. The civil disobedience for refusing to move her seat on the bus, that brought in a lot of like media attention. Like, there was a lot of criticism about it from both sides, because I think that as people, just as people, we can agree that there's no reason to treat people poorly. And color of skin is definitely the weakest reason to treat people poorly, regardless of what it is. And after 381 days of sacrifice, collaboration, and determination, the Montgomery bus boycott ended successfully after Alabama bus companies were forced to recognize a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that segregation on public transport was illegal. So all of their efforts actually really did change the course of history. Like, it seems so small to me because I've never really rode public transport. I don't live in a place where there is public transport. So actually reading about this and seeing like how important that public transport was, especially to our Black community, it was incredible to be able to go through and see all of the different movements that happened to bring change, um, to the public busing system. And so that's the story of Montgomery, Alabama. Incoming vibe.
Ooh.
Welcome back. That was
Oh,
deep.
so yeah, that's a lot to talk about. Just the fact that people were at a point where we had to segregate by color just because I don't like the way you look. That's so stupid.
Pathetic.
It is. It's a sad excuse, but it also makes you think of how far we've come as a population, as a species. Like, look, man, we don't have time for all this. I'm
Oh
human,
my
you're
god.
human. Let's just get some coffee or something, you know?
Hang on just a second.
You know, it's just it's difficult for a lot of people to still, even to this day, let go of that kind of discrimination, which is mind blowing to a lot of people who are just like, life could be so much better. if we all treated each other with dignity and respect, and all that started right there in Alabama, right there in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's not like they starved themselves like a lot of the protesters we see today. What blows my mind is that this was a very peaceful protest. Like nobody got hurt and they still got arrested. That
Mhm.
blew my mind because today it's not like that at all.
Right. But I mean, then again, just like today, you also don't sit on a bus segregated by color.
That's true. But I've noticed that the protests seem to be getting violent. And that
But
should be legal.
that's because people are getting angry to a point where the government's not listening, and it's becoming to a point where the people are freaking out because people are becoming desperate. And when you add desperation into the mix, coming from somebody who's I've been overseas, so I've seen some pretty desperate situations.
Mm-hmm.
And when people get this desperate, it's just like 9/11 when people were trying to escape the building. They're still going to jump even though they know what the answer is going to happen. It doesn't matter. It's
So
almost inevitable, which sucks.
my thoughts with that is if these people back then who were being treated awful, if they could have a peaceful protest and change the outcome of history, why can't we repeat that?
Because people can only say they're fed up with something long enough before action is taken.
I like how they targeted something that would be an actual loss. So, for example, I think Walmart is a huge industry. iPhones are a huge industry.
Hmm.
I think that that would be a way to bring attention to somebody with power. I'm gonna organize a boycott for iPhones.
Right.
That's gonna pull in some attention. You see what I'm saying? Like there are ways to still peacefully do it that would be crippling enough for one place to be forced to listen. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you also got things like other companies trying to get up into the mix to change that because there needs to be a shift in how things are done. Just look at our electric systems. I mean, you got places like Tesla who's trying to reinvent electricity, or
Mm-hmm.
even if you want to take it further back, the original Nikola Tesla, whose idea was to give everybody on the planet free access to energy. And it's just a continual thing of it's a part of control, and it's people don't want to understand like the truth behind, you got to start from one small place and grow that out. So Rosa Parks and MLK, they planted those seeds right there, and it's been growing ever since. But just
Mm-hmm.
like a government, at some point there's enough when people are like, okay, we've been doing this for 60 freaking years, gloves are coming off.
Yeah.
because the because like government system wants to escalate their force, therefore the people have to do the same. But
Right.
I agree that it's being gone about the wrong way. There's so many different ways that it could be handled, and there are a lot of peaceful protests, but it's not the
There really
protesters
are.
who are causing the problem.
There really are. I think the a big solution to that would be not to publicize and televise the more aggressive protests and blow the peaceful ones up. Like this is what we need to see because they're actually going through and explaining what the problem is. They're
There's
telling you what they're
more.
going
Yeah.
to do if it's not fixed. It's more productive and less destructive.
Hmm.
And I think that that would help a lot. So some fun facts about
No, you're right. Fact.
Montgomery is Rosa Parks was actually a lifelong activist. She never quit. She continued
Hmm.
to go even after she was arrested several times for being an activist for our African American community. Um, and then Rosa Parks wasn't the first or only person that was arrested for disrupting the bus segregation. The first person to actually refuse to give up their seat was a kid.
Yeah,
And
17-year-old girl.
that's why they didn't super publicize that, is because they didn't feel that she would be able to
It would
handle the
be,
public criticism that she would get for
yeah, it's
what,
still a
she was
child.
17, you know. So while she was the first one that did it, and it really turned some heads, like, hey, this kid's onto something. Rosa Parks was the one that took it to a higher level, and those two actually ended up connecting and becoming great friends, lifelong
Oh,
friends.
that's awesome.
Definitely. Um, she actually had gotten into a fight with a bus driver because she had paid her fare and they ran out of seats. And so they kicked her off, but they didn't give her money back. And so she actually ended up getting into quite a dispute with the bus driver because he kicked her off and wouldn't give her her bus fare back.
Hmm. And back then, that 75 cents, if that was, that's like you said, $4 was a decent amount of money back then. So I mean,
Yeah.
if you're paying to us, that's like $20 in gas, basically.
Yep. Yep.
Like when you want to look at the stretch of how money went. Yeah.
Another fun fact about it that I really liked is that while a lot of ministers are often celebrated as the boycott's organizers, it was all women who actually organized the initial boycott. The men kind of were recruited after the women already had the ball rolling and
Right.
already had everything
They came
planned.
up with the
And
plan. They just needed the mules,
yes, yep.
which, we're meat. It's cool.
Well, women did the protest too. They still had to do the walking and stuff.
Oh yeah.
You didn't. It comes at the exact same time 2 hours later. Hurry. Hurry. No one was there. I know. It comes 2 hours later. I'll just give you a ride after my show. So we had a snow day. I'm sorry. And on
No, don't
snow days,
apologize. You're
the
fine.
school starts 2 hours later. And my
No,
kids are
we
like,
had the same thing
oh.
happen. We had a snow day last week, so I get it.
So the turnout for the Montgomery protest was massive. There was 45,000 people that were attending and participating in the boycott, and it wasn't just black people. White people also quit riding the bus.
Right, because indecency is indecency. You shouldn't be treating another or human being like that. And that's one of the biggest things that started the
Absolutely.
whole human rights movements in the first place. Was just the
Yep.
fact that people were just tired of not being treated like people. We're not property. We're not aliens. We're not, out to get anybody. We're just people who are trying to survive like you. The problem is
Definitely.
you survive by putting people under your boot, whereas I survive by working my off.
Right. No, definitely. So the last fun fact that I have is that Martin Luther King Jr. was only 26 when he participated in the movement.
Man, I had a heart attack by then.
Yeah, 26 years old. That's incredible. Martin Luther King really was an incredible individual. He was brilliant, he was smart, he was soft spoken, and he had an incredible amount of integrity.
And those of you who don't know what integrity is, it means doing the right thing even when nobody's looking.
Yes. And that's all I've got for the place for
All
Montgomery,
right.
Alabama today. If you're just joining Person, Place, or Thing, thank you so much for coming. On Person, Place, and Thing, we go over this week in history. We just talked about our person, who was Buffalo Bill, and our place was Montgomery, Alabama. And that's where the bus boycotts started for segregation of the buses, to end the segregation of the buses. We are in transition to be a featured show, so please, no cussing, no drinking, no smoking, and no nudity. Um, and our thing is actually going to be aspirin. And the reason that I chose aspirin is because the patent for aspirin was given on, I'm trying to find the exact day. 26th. Hang on, I'm sorry. I'm all discombobulated for a minute. Okay, so aspirin, 40,000 years ago, the ancient Sumerians they made a really surprising discovery where they would scrape off the bark of the white willow and they would eat it and it would help ease their pain. And then they started making it into tea, and that actually is what started aspirin, is white willow bark, in 4,000 years ago. Later, they found out that the influence of that medicine 4,000 years ago, yes, 4,000 years ago, is when aspirin was first taken to help with pain. Um, so that the tree bark that they would scrape off, they didn't have any idea how influential that was going to be for the future course of medicine. In fact, back then, I'm pretty sure that they didn't know what medicine was at all. It was just something that they noticed that helped their toothache or their feet or whatever hurt people back 4,000 years ago. Um, Aspirin's active ingredient is commonly found in willow trees and other wild plants, which is what started medical traditions, was alchemy. So breaking up plants and discovering what different uses they have. And white willow happened to be one of those, and that's what brought aspirin on. Um, So actually, technically, they attribute the medical traditions of Sumner, ancient Egypt, and ancient Greece um, as the founders for what started modern medicine. They first recommended chewing willow bark for pain relief, and then they began making it into a tea, which they used for women to help with childbirth. I could not even imagine going through childbirth and all I got to help me with my pain is a freaking aspirin. That would be so terrible. So after it took over 2,000 years for humankind to comprehensively see the potential that white willow tree bark actually had. And in the mid 18th centuries, an Englishman named Edward Stone ran 5 years of experience showing that willow bark crushed into a powder and eaten could cure a fever. It took almost another 70 years for a German pharmacist, Johann Buchner, to finally identify and purify the substance that made it all possible, called Sicilian. Salicin. It's stuff that they started using for like warts and growths on skin. They would make it into like a paste, and then they would put that on like skin ailments, and then they refined it some more and made it into capsules. And then it went through a lot of synthesization. So at that time that they were making the compound, doctors were actually routinely using willow bark and other salicin rich plants like the herb meadowsweet. And that helped with pain, fever, and inflammation. But identifying the exact compound suddenly opened up a possibility of manipulating its form. So once they were able to get it really purified and stabilized, they were able to manipulate it to do exactly what they wanted it to do. In 1853, a French chemist managed to chemically synthesize the compound, creating the substance called acetylsalicylate acid. Then in 1897, the pharmaceutical company Bayer found a new method and began marketing the compound as a pain reliever called aspirin. If you guys have never looked into Bayer, just the company, you should look into it because there is so much drama and conspiracy and scandal behind the brand Bayer, which is a medication brand. Um, so it was Bayer was widely recognized as one of the first synthetic pharmaceutical drugs producers of aspirin because they helped to discover it. Aspirin was originally just a Bayer's brand name, so they had that trademarked. Nobody else could use the word aspirin. They had to use that really long word that nobody knows how to say. Um, the name derives from the acetyl part of the name, the acetylglycolic acid, and then spur, SPIR, for meadowsweet, and then they added the N in aspirin to make it easier to say. Soon, aspirin became synonymous with acetylsalicylic acid. As its influence grew, aspirin was found to ease not just pain but also inflammation related um, problems like rheumatoid arthritis, pancreatitis. That's where the sac that your heart is in is inflamed. Um, and then the Kawasaki's disease, where blood vessels become inflamed. And yet, despite the aspirin's medical value at this point, scientists still didn't actually know how it worked. So they knew that it worked, but they didn't know why. Um, in the 1960s and 70s, Swedish and British scientists changed that. They showed that the drug interrupts the production of certain chemicals called prostaglandins, which control the transmission of pain, sensations, and inflammation. Gucci, I'm doing my featured show called Person, Place, or Thing, well, my soon to be featured show. I'm not trying to ignore you, it's just part of the show, dear. They showed that the drug interrupts that prostaglandins, which control the transmission of pain, sensations, and inflammation. In 1982, that discovery won the researchers a Nobel Prize in medicine. Over time, researchers also uncovered aspirin's risks. So, over consuming aspirin can cause all sorts of issues, including bleeding in the intestines and the brain. So, essentially, if you take too much aspirin, you'll just start bleeding internally. It can also trigger Ray's syndrome. That's a rare but really fatal illness that affects the brain and the liver in children, and it can be accompanied with a fever. And in the late 20th century, aspirin's success had been overshadowed by newer painkillers with fewer side effects. So, like Tylenol, ibuprofen, um, those kind of painkillers. But in the 1980s, further discoveries about aspirin's benefits revived interest in it. So it came out to show that aspirin helps with heart attacks, right? I mean, we hear commercials all the time, especially infomercials, where they would say if you're starting to feel chest pain, take an aspirin and call your doctor. And that's why, is because they found that it reduced um, heart attacks up to 40%. Yeah, I take baby aspirin for a blood clotting disorder that I have. I lost my spot. So, the 20th century, let me see. Okay, so like I was just saying, in 1982, it won another Nobel Prize because it was able to demonstrate that aspirin slows the production of thromboxans, which in turn form blood clots. So aspirin helps to actually make sure that you don't get blood clots, which is also just incredible. A landmark clinical trial showed that aspirin reduced heart attack risks by 44% in participants who took the drug. Today, it's prescribed to people to reduce the risk of heart attack or stroke because it cuts the likelihood of clots forming in the arteries and that supply the heart and the brain. Even more interesting, though, there's a growing body of research that suggests that aspirin reduces the risks of getting and dying from cancer. especially colorectal cancer. This might be due to the aspirin's antiplatelet effects. So, by reducing the platelet activity, aspirin may decrease the levels of certain protein that helps the cancer to spread. Um, these discoveries have transformed aspirin from a mere pain reliever to a life-saving treatment. Today, we consume about 100 billion aspirin tablets each year, and researchers are continuing search for new applications. Already, aspirin's versatility has transformed modern medicine, which is astounding considering its humble beginnings of scraping willow tree bark. It went from willow tree bark to help with a toothache to helping cure freaking cancer. That is incredible to me.
That's insane. Like if you think about it here, let's just think about how far that went. It went from tree bark to acetaminophen to who knows, like silicate derivatives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
This
just pick
research was hard because of all
this
the big
big
words.
freaking blade and just like, all right, guys, you got the basket ready? Like a big giant potato peeler on the side of a tree, you know?
Right? Yeah, and the way that like what I thought was fascinating is watching how they actually were able to isolate the compounds that they needed from the tree bark, and then they were able to find it in a large number of other plants.
So it kind of started like a gold rush for this new Tylenol.
Yeah, this old Tylenol because it was before
Old
Tylenol.
Tylenol. Old aspirin. Old aspirin.
Old aspirin. Yep. It is the most widely used drug in the world.
I mean, I could see that, but I mean, like you were saying, you know, the change with the less side effects and stuff with the ibuprofen and whatnot. You know, I know that the army gives those things out like candy.
Yeah. So most people take aspirin without even knowing that they take it
Hmm.
because it's in a whole bunch of different medications. It's
Oh,
used
it's
for
not just in the
relieving.
medications, and so much more too.
Yeah, like you could be taking aspirin with your salad.
Let's put it this way. Uh, I remember I was living here a while ago, and there was a big controversy because they were putting fluoride in the water.
Yeah, we had a big controversy over that here too.
But I mean, they're doing, people do stuff like that, and you don't even
Right?
know. Like, here, I'm going
It's
to eat
used.
this apple, but this apple was grown from a willow tree, and now it's an aspirin apple. Congratulations, pain
It's a
killing
pain.
fruit.
An apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Right. Or apparently an aspirin apple.
An aspirin apple, yeah. It's used for relieving more than 50 symptoms, including sleep
And I mean,
disorders.
yeah. Now, I mean, if you could think about that, if they were ever able to combine the two to have that aspirin grow so much larger just in a piece of food, watch out, world.
Right? Aspirin
They're gonna
could
need it for
benefit
space travel.
aspirin could benefit 11 different cancers, and it can do this because it inhibits the cancer from growing.
Right, with the platelets.
Yeah. That's life-changing because the with cancer the problem becomes when it spreads. Like that's when you're in real trouble is when cancer in your body has spread to other parts of your body.
Hmm.
Aspirin can help to make sure that that doesn't happen. So instead of it being life threatening, you've got time because it's pretty much controlled right here in this one spot. You have time to come up with a plan.
Depending on the severity of the cancer, I would imagine. But
And
yeah,
the
I mean,
type of the cancer, yeah,
but
definitely.
it
But
but it definitely does, you know, help. It would just be better if it had less side effects. You know, the bleeding to
yes. Well, that's if
that's
you
that's kind of a
overtake
big
it. And
one.
That's if you overtake it, and I'm talking like habitual overuse every day.
Oh yeah, like you're taking like 6,000 milligrams a day, whereas like me, I take 81 milligrams a day. That's it. Little baby aspirin.
So the baby aspirins is actually 0.81.
Oh, see there, even less.
And aspirin is actually good for your brain. They've noticed that people that take aspirin regularly for like heart conditions, their chances of getting Alzheimer's later on in life is significantly reduced.
I don't know. I participate in extracurricular activities, so I forget all the time. I don't know if that's gonna help my case.
So children should never be given aspirin, and that's because of its effects that it has on the organs. Their bodies aren't quite developed enough to be able to
To
process
handle what
the
it,
chemicals in aspirin, even
yeah,
baby aspirin. They even don't recommend giving baby aspirin to babies.
no,
Not at all.
no. I
What a
mean,
coinky
it's
dink.
been a hot minute since I've had kids that young, so yeah,
And an overdose of aspirin can make you deaf.
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 Okay, so some of these don't seem like they would connect very well, but at the same time, it does. They,
it you listen, you
but
might
then
get
again, you're
Alzheimer's,
talking
but
about like a massive overdose of
yes,
aspirin.
I like could be fatal overdose.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
that's wild. Well, what we don't want to do is give anybody an idea of what an overdose amount is.
Yeah, we definitely baby
Yeah, I already
aspirin
know
is
you know, Dr. Kevorkian. Calm down.
baby aspirin is what I'm saying is what you should take at any time because I know it's safe.
Yeah.
So we're
Well, I
coming
mean,
toward
because
the
you're
end of the
taking such a
show.
low enough dose of it.
Yeah, we're coming to the end of the show. Person, place, and thing. For those that have just joined or stayed the whole time, thank you so much. Person, place, and thing. We go on a cruise through history and we talk about a person, a place, and a thing for this week in history. My guest today is Vibrance. And I'm going to go over the quote and then I'd like to hear about your stream.
Okay.
So the quote comes from Buffalo Bill, and he says, "Don't ever say you're sorry for being caught in the moment, because at that moment, that is exactly where you want it to be."
Yeah. Be unapologetic about who you are and where you are.
Definitely. I thought that was awesome because, like, a lot of people, they get sorry because they got caught. You know what I mean? I'm not sorry because
You're only
I
sorry
did it.
because you
I'm
got caught.
sorry because you caught me. And that kind of I feel goes along with this quote like you're apologizing for doing something that you wanted to do.
And you shouldn't have to, ever, to anybody.
I thought it was an
Just saying.
interesting quote.
It's a good one.
Definitely. So tell me about your stream vibe.
Ooh, snakes. So my name is Vibrance. I am the host of Who Wants to Be a Diamondaire on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's a 15-question trivia game where I use special effects and all sorts of other funky little things to play the games. And we have special effects, we have song requests, we have the bouncers have control. So even if I'm not here, the stream still runs. The music requests still can get put in and everything like that. Uh, Recently applied for a top badge, but man, we're just having fun with life with it, you know?
I hope you get it.
We're working on it. I mean, we're hoping because if so, we're going to try to make some changes around this beast.
I feel you. I feel you. Do you have any upcoming like battles or
So I don't
auctions?
really participate in a lot of battles. I do have Silly Lily's pajama auction coming up on the 12th, and then I will be doing another auction with Emerald Empress So it'll
Nice.
be and that one's April.
Nice. And this will be found on your Instagram, all the information?
Yep. All the information can be found on Instagram. I stream practically all day, most days.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome. Everybody make sure that you have hit vibe with that favorite. It sounds like he's got quite a lot going on over there. And I've actually been to his stream a few times when I found out that he was going to be my guest. You know, I went and stalked him. And
That's all right.
the vibe was chill. He was not disrespectful or rude. And I think that a lot of my
Can be.
people would
I'm
appreciate
not.
that. I'm sure you can be,
I,
so can I, but every time I've been there, you weren't. I mean, you were blunt, but there's a difference between blunt and rude.
right. Yeah. I just, like my buddy Sav says. There's a difference between good and evil. I'm neither. I'm just fair. I try to be fair. Period.
Definitely. Do you want to hear about my stream?
I do.
So, hashtag SOS stands for Success Over Suicide and Substance Abuse. It's a nonprofit that I formed. It's a legally recognized nonprofit. And on my stream is where we came up with the idea. So, I document my whole nonprofit, everything on my
Hmm.
stream because there was so many people in my stream that helped me come up with the idea. This is what I do is I make these boxes and then I fill them with items that help with coping and distraction. This one's kind of empty. There's a lot more that goes into them. But then I take these boxes and I donate them to different groups and organizations that are high in suicide and addiction rates, like our vets, our police force, our firefighters, our kids in state's care, our domestic violence shelters, victims advocate, homeless shelters, rehab shelters. We donate to 13 different states right now. That's what we do on my stream is
Busy.
is we
That's
we do my
awesome.
nonprofit. Everybody that comes here regularly is included in it too.
Awesome. Well, I might have to start coming by more often.
I hope you do.
Well, thank you so much, for letting me be a part of your show. It was actually pretty entertaining and very eye opening. There's a lot of things I didn't know about Buffalo Bill that now I know.
It's more about the lotion, or it's not just about the
Right.
lotion.
It's more about the lotion.
It's
Yes.
more about the lotion.
Into the basket with he worm.
Or it gets the hose again. I used to tell my
Right.
kids that when they would misbehave. It puts the trash in the garbage or it gets the hose again.
I pretty much I say it to a lot of people. It puts the lotion on the skin, or it gets the hose again. It's
Thank
like
you
the
guys
order.
so much for coming for Person, Place, and Thing. Vibe, thank you so much for being here. It was a real treat, and I do hope you come
Hey,
back
thank you for
sometime.
having me. You have yourself an awesome stream.
You too, Vibe. And thank you all for coming. I know I didn't acknowledge the gifts, but I do appreciate them so very much. Um, I can't really acknowledge them throughout the stream. I can't really talk to the comments while I'm doing my show, but I do appreciate them so very much. If you guys would like to be on the show, please get a hold of Emoji J. He pretty much is my brain for all of this. I do the research and then I share it with you, and that's all that I do. He does the rest. So if you want to be on it, please get a hold of Emoji J. And that's it. That's all I got. I have to take my kids to school now because it was late start today because of the snow, and I got to run them to school because school is important. But I'll be back after I take them to school and probably get a rock star because I was up ridiculously early today. I'll be back.